I would like to explain about the period of absolutism in France. So this was the time basically in the 17th century where a monarch had an absolute power. That means he or she could decide basically about everything, about the way country was run, about the laws, about the punishments. And this was all based on a theory of so-called divine rights. That means people believed that the right to rule was given to a king or queen by God. So it justified this absolute power. Now, the main person who epitomizes this era was King Louis XIV, or so-called Sun King, that we see here on this portrait. But before we go to the Sun King, I would like to explain something about the path France went on the way to becoming an absolute monarchy. The first important person here is King Henry IV, who united the country after the period of religious wars. So Henry was originally a Protestant, but for the sake of being accepted by everybody, because not everybody, liked a Protestant king, he converted to Catholicism. He also really strengthened the royal power. He created a system of royal representatives who could oversee the nation. He invested in the development of the nation. So, for example, developed agriculture. He initiated many building projects like bridges and wars and roads. And we still have a famous Pont Neuf in Paris that you can see if you ever go for a trip to Paris. Also, one very wise decision that he made was ensuring the religious freedom. So freedom of belief for the Huguenots, that means the Protestants. And it was done by the Edict of Nantes in 1598. So that finished the period of bloodshed. Next important figure was Cardinal Richelieu. Now, Richelieu was a chief minister under the next king, Louis XIII. And of course, as you see, he was a Catholic cleric, but he also had a very good military upbringing and a very shrewd political sense. So really his aim was to strengthen the royal government. And he thought that, two main groups that might threaten the king are nobles and Huguenots. So he tried to limit their power. For example, he did not allow Huguenots to fortify their cities or keep armies, or he appointed some nobles for posts at the court. That means he gave them very good, well-paid and prestigious jobs, so they would be loyal to the king. He also ordered nobles to destroy the fortifications around their castle. That means they were not able to fight against the king. They wouldn't have their military power. Cardinal Mazarin was the next chief minister that continued the line of Richelieu, and he was also the tutor to the next king, Louis XIV, the person that we want to focus on today. So Louis XIV, after the death of Cardinal Mazarin, he decided not to appoint a chief minister, but to take all government into own hands. He really believed in those divine rights to rule. And he had a famous statement, L'État c'est moi. That means I am the state. It tells us a lot, right? He saw himself as the most important figure. He also chose sun as his emblem. So just like the sun is in the center of the planets that rotate around it, the same way he saw himself in the center of everything. In the same way, also his bedroom, for example, was in the center of the palace at Versailles. We'll talk about it a little bit later. So what he really wanted to do is keep aristocracy in check. So these were the people who before were used to having power. And also Louis had quite a bad experience when he was a child. When he was around 10 years old, France was a scene of a series of rebellions, both by aristocracy and general population. And he had to escape Paris twice, so it was quite a traumatic experience. So because of that, he never really liked Paris, and he really wanted to control the aristocracy. So one thing, for example, he did is that he exempted aristocracy from taxes. It was a move to really, bind them to him. For example, even nowadays, many politicians, when they want to ensure support from a certain groups, they promised a decrease of taxes. So Louis used the same tactics. And, at the time it worked. But we know that later, unfortunately, that would bring really serious economic problems for France. The Sun King also developed a system of bureaucracy, that means royal representatives that, again, would oversee different regions of France, would represent the king, would collect the taxes, and also would report to king directly. So in this way, he could, be very much in control. And the bureaucracy was based on the middle class. So in this way, there was one more group to support the king. Louis XIV also never summoned a States General, which was a kind of advisory body to the king, so he didn't want anybody to interfere. But he had one person that he trusted, which was his finance minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert. So Colbert was a very smart man who had a difficult task, because when he came to power, France was really bankrupt. So he introduced a series of reforms, and he really thought that France needs to produce more, needs to export more, and import less. So he focused on developing local industries. For example, production of textiles, production of glass and mirrors. He also introduced taxes on imported goods so that it would pay off to buy everything within the country than to import anything. And in this way, money would remain inside of the nation. He also regulated trade with the colonies, which was another very good source of income, and strengthened and reorganized the tax system. And in this way, built up a strong treasury. Now, he was very successful, and he developed France economically, but the problem was that Louis XIV actually spent too much money on war. He built up a huge army and fought war with the Dutch, because he wanted to extend the territory of France. Now, also other countries were kind of afraid that France was becoming too powerful, so basically France had to fight with all the powers of Europe, like Austria, Britain, Holy Roman Empire, and so on. So eventually this really drained treasury, and the king is believed to have said at his deathbed that I loved war too much. Also another, huge expense was the building project at Versailles. So the king built a huge palace just a little bit outside of Paris, in a place where before there was just a small hunting lodge. So as you see, it's really huge, and the garden was also very, very beautiful, and it all, involved huge amounts of money. The interior was also very beautiful and lavish, and we know that the king, moved in here together with his whole court and also with many members of aristocracy. He forced many people to live here with him or come here on a daily basis. Every day there were 3,000 to 10,000 people living here. There was a very strict etiquette, the way people related to the king and so on. They had to be very mindful of him. And to illustrate it, I would like to read you a fragment of a source text of someone who lived there at Versailles. So it speaks about the king. Said he used to cast his eyes to right and left. Nothing escaped him. He saw everybody. If anyone habitually living at court absented himself, he insisted on knowing the reason. Those who came there only for flying visits had also to give a satisfactory explanation. Anyone who seldom or never appeared there was certain to incur his displeasure. If asked to bestow a favor on such persons, he would reply haughtily, I do not know him. Of such as rarely presented themselves, he would say, he is a man I never see, and from these judgments there was no appeal. We know that also king had a huge ego, and he was very proud of his well-toned legs, which are usually very prominent on his portraits. So it gives us an idea of what kind of person he was, and the aristocracy really grew tired of the life at Versailles. They were kind of relieved when king eventually died in the year 1715, so they could move back. So now still Versailles is of course still there, and it's a very interesting place to visit. So I invite you, if you're ever in Paris, to come and see Versailles and learn more about King Louis XIV.